Welcome to Talking Technology with NCBI Labs, where we believe that technology is the single greatest enabler for people with sight loss and all disabilities. If you are interested in the latest technology news, products, and innovations, then you've come to the right place.
Yes, you most certainly have. Hello and welcome to Talking Technology, episode number 27. It is the 21st of March, 2023, and we have a show absolutely packed to the rafters for you coming up over the next hour and a little bit. So what have we got coming up on the show, you might ask? Well, we'll be taking a look at the CSUN conference, which took place in the United States of America over the last week, which is really cool. We had a correspondent on the ground, and we'll be getting all the details on that later on in the show. We'll also have loads of the latest tech news for you. That's coming up as well. So loads of exciting stuff. And we're going to be talking about the debate that is iOS, Android, and what is it like to switch from one to the other. It's going to be an interesting conversation, and we'll have that coming up in just a minute too. Now, if you'd like to get in touch with the show over the next little while, you can send an email to labs@ncbi.ie, or if you're joining us live on Microsoft Teams, you can use the Q&A panel. It's all accessible and ready to go. So send a message to us and we'll respond to that for you later in the show. Alrighty. Let's get the show on the road then, shall we? So switching to Android or iPhone, switching operating system is a big move. But what's it like to switch from iOS, which is used by probably the vast majority of people who have visual impairment or blindness? But what's it like to switch to Android? Well, we set our CTO of the NCBI, yes, we got the boss involved. We set our CTO, Kyran O'Mahony, the challenge of switching to Android for a couple of weeks as his daily driver. And let's see how this goes, shall we? Kyran, welcome to Talking Technology. How are you?
I'm very good, David. It's great to be back. And
I know, it's been a while.
I can't believe I'm back in a podcast. I'm so excited.
Yeah, last time you were here, I think, was the IA Labs launch. Am I right?
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Just coming up in a full year now.
Yeah, mental. So, Kyran, what have you done? You've switched from iPhone?
No, not yet. I'm about to.
Oh, you're about to.
I'm feeling.
Okay.
I'm feeling a little ashamed, David. Actually, I don't know if I want to do this.
Why? Do you feel like a traitor?
I do actually, yeah,
Okay.
a little bit. But an opportunity came up. So in IA Labs, NCBI sister company, we test for digital accessibility on multiple devices. So we needed to get an Android device in to do some testing, and the thought occurred to me, well, listen, maybe we could see how I would get on for it. But I'm feeling the regret now. I've just informed my wife that she can say goodbye to blue texts. So my iMessage days are stopping for a little while.
And FaceTime.
And FaceTime as well. FaceTime is gone. Yeah. I think, maybe over the next few weeks, I might need a little bit of support from fellow iOS users like yourself, I think, just to, you can just send me pictures of what good UX used to look like.
Yeah, exactly. We can send you screenshots on Teams and just be like, remember the good old days?
Yeah. Remember when things didn't crash?
Yes. Well, I know maybe we're prejudging.
There's some Android guys that are dying to come in and correct me on everything I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
So I'm really looking forward to the healthy debate.
The knives are being sharpened.
Sharpened. Well and truly sharpened indeed, I'm sure. So, Kyran, I suppose before we get into the nitty gritty of this, then what you mentioned iMessage and FaceTime, but what are do you have like apprehensions going into this? What are you expecting, and what are you maybe nervous about? Well,
I've said on other podcasts as well, on Talking Technology, that for me, my iPhone is probably, as someone with very low vision, my iPhone is probably my number one accessibility tool. So everything from public transport, I use it to zoom in on bus numbers, to reading documents and work during the day, right up till preparing food. I use it to read labels, to going to bed at night. I read my little girl her nighttime stories using the magnification app. So I'm a bit nervous about that. The other side of things is, one of the things that originally drew me to iOS was the ability to make the font size quite big. So I use pretty much the largest font size on iOS. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. But the team here, Sean, soon to be unemployed Doran, and Daniel, I used to have a job, done, have really assured me that they can set up Android in a way that's going to make it accessible for me. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to go through that process with all of our listeners.
Okay, brilliant. So before we start, do you believe that this will be a positive experience? And we'll ask you the same question again in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, actually, I do. To be fair, it's a unique opportunity, so I'd like to do it, and hopefully we're all still friends at the end, maybe.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's get down to business then, shall we? So you haven't set the phone up yet, I believe. So first of all, what phone have you got there? And why don't you describe it, I suppose, tactily first? How does it feel? What was your first impression when you took it out of the box?
Slippy.
Okay.
Actually, genuinely. So,
are you a case man on your iOS device?
Not yet, no. Well, so on my iOS. So I just for perspective, I use the one of the Pros. I'm not sure which model it is, and one of the reasons I don't really know which model it is because I tend to just go for whatever has the biggest screen. That's typically, the first buying decision that I would have when I'm picking a phone. So whatever I can use as biggest screen. So it's an iPhone. It's one of the Pro Maxes. I'm not really sure which model it is. And what I'm switching to, and it was a recommendation by Sean Doran on the NCBI Labs team, to go with probably a pure Android experience, Sean. I think that's what you told me. So it's a Pixel Pro 7, I believe it is. That's correct, Sean, is it?
Yeah, so I was suggesting we go with a Pixel device because it will have stock Android, which is Android at the intended build. So when Google build Android and do updates for Android, it's called the stock version. It's basically what they put out. So other manufacturers like Samsung might take that build and change it slightly, change the menu structure, put overlays on it, add different things to it, sometimes take away things. So a stock version we thought would be best just for someone who's going to be brand new to Android.
Now, one thing I will say, I have hit the on button. And on the very first screen that I see in really large writing, it says "Welcome to your Pixel," and there's a very clearly defined accessibility setup option. So we're off to a pretty good start, I would say, Dave.
That sounds good. And that option is on the screen, is it? And it's easy to see.
Yeah, very first screen that comes on. So it's a black background with high contrasting white text, which is good.
Yeah.
It's meeting all the kind of the general kind of digital accessibility requirements. And there is some background graphics that are kind of mobile, but they're not distracting at all, and I don't think they're taking away from your ability to clearly read it. What I noticed too, which was a nice little feature, was that it automatically detected that the language was English-Irish or English-Ireland, and then defaulted to set up the accessibility settings. So now the call to actions to actually move next are quite small, I would say. But again, I can clearly see that it's a button. I can't read what's on the button, but I'm assuming it's the next button.
And is that also in white text then?
It's in black, but the call to action has a surround button, which is kind of a lightish blue, which is kind of taking away from some of the visibility of the button, I would say. Okay. I'd say the contrast ratio is a little different. And interestingly, it's the smallest text of the entire screen, which is an unusual design decision, but I would commend so far, given that accessibility is the default option that you need to set up. So I have that selected, but I think it's probably on to move to see how you would set up accessibility on the Google phone, if you think that's the next.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Now, let me just see. It's prompting me to go through to Wi-Fi. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to try it out one more time, because I think that I think that the call to action was not to move into the accessibility settings, would be my guess. So I'm going to restart the phone just to make sure that I'm not mistaken on that one.
And what was it that indicated to you that it was accessibility before?
Just a writing with accessibility and kind of the accessibility icon of the man.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I thought that time. Okay, now
and we should say, I suppose, as well, for those who don't know you, Kyran, that you have low vision and that you're not a screen reader user.
No, I have enough usable vision usually to get around most devices. I use audio captions sometimes on TV, but I wouldn't use screen readers.
Do you ever use like a physical, say, handheld magnifier now or anything like that, or?
Oh, I grew up with them, yeah, like most people, yeah. Before I started using my iPhone, I usually had one of them close by at all time.
I still have one here just next to me.
Yeah. I only recently found I used to use monoculars as well for long distance, and I actually found a little box of them recently. I thought I'd lost, and I've now started to carry one as a kind of a backup now, so just in case my iPhone goes down. So I think what I've noticed is after restarting now has jumped past the accessibility settings. So I think I'm going to have to go through some of the normal setup process. My guess would be is that that text was selectable to bring into accessibility. So I think this will tell you how real life it is. I'm literally doing this for the first time. So I'm going to need to put in some Wi-Fi passwords and things like that. So why don't you go back to Sean and Daniel just to talk a little bit about the accessibility options on the device while I key in some password details.
Absolutely. So I suppose we'll come to you first, Daniel, then, because you have experimented a little bit with the Android side, I believe. So you've actually been a bit of an advocate for the Android side in the past. So what's your impression of Android from an accessibility point of view?
Yeah, I suppose once it's set up and to be aware of the range of options that are available in the accessibility menu, it's I suppose somebody coming fresh into Android might be saying, oh, well, is this available, is that available? And generally the answer is yes. So it's when you delve under the cover then, and let's say you're setting up magnification, and one thing I like about the Android is it'll give you obviously magnification. You can switch it on, and how you bring that into play when you want it. And my favorite option is actually gives you about 2 or 3 different options. My favorite option for the magnification is the triple tap with one finger on the screen, and setting that as the call to action to bring magnification into play is one thing that impresses me, because it's really, really easy. It's really easy to work with then, so that's one of my favorite features of the Android accessibility.
That's interesting, because that's a 3-finger job on the iOS side. So
yeah,
that's a really interesting difference, isn't it? And Sean, from your... Sorry, go ahead, Daniel, sorry.
Yeah, it is for me, because I have both phones. So personal use, I have the Android, and for work purposes, I have the iOS. So for me, magnification is way easier on the Android.
Interesting. And Sean, if I could ask you on a similar note, what's your impression of the Android side then? Do you use Android much? Do you find yourself using Android much?
Yeah, on my personal phone, I use Android. I just always have. From a training point of view and a support point of view, obviously we use iPhones at work. iPhones were first out the gate with accessibility, so they obviously had a bigger market share in terms of people using it. And like from NCBI's point of view at staff, they're easier to secure and maintain and provide that kind of user functionality, because it's one operating system for all devices. So from a security point of view, it allows us to easily manage them. From a training point of view, it allows us to more easily train people, because if I tell you, David, that I need you to do this thing in iOS, I can tell you exactly where to go to on the menu, and that will be the same across all phones. But with Android, I kind of like that it's slightly different in terms of each phone has a kind of different flavor. You know, the Samsung can do one thing better, a Huawei might do this thing better, or like stock Google, like we're talking about there with phones like the Pixels, will have your standard version. So it gives a lot of flexibility in how I can change things and add things. So sometimes a device's greatest strength can be its weakness. For me, I like that kind of flexibility where I can add programs, change things around, maybe change the default email application. And I know iOS is starting to do that too, but that is the kind of reason I like in my personal phone having those options with Android. But while at work, when I need to actually maybe train someone, it's far more efficient for me to do that on an iOS device.
So you're kind of hinting there, I think, that you can kind of style an Android phone to your lifestyle a little more than perhaps you can on the iOS side there.
Yeah, no, if I was to buy my mother a phone, I'd buy her an iPhone, because if she rings me asking how to do something, I can tell her exactly how it's done. If she has a Samsung phone and I have a OnePlus phone and our operating systems are slightly different, it might take me 5 or 6 minutes to maybe talk her through how to get to a certain setting and fix that, while the consistency of iOS devices is very beneficial. And I'm laughing here at Dominique has put a question in, but it's more of a statement. She's saying she admires Kyran and Mairead for switching over, and she says it'll never be her, and Apple are far better when it comes to accessibility. And I think when Dominique says admire, she might pity Kyran and Mairead there, but the point of this whole thing is
I'm
Apple
already feeling the pain, Dominique. I'm feeling the pain.
Apple accessibility, while it's out the gate first, and it's really good, Android accessibility is getting much better, and it allows people options in terms of prices for phones. And you can get a phone for maybe €100 all the way up to the same price of an iPhone of €1,000, and everything in between. So it's those kind of options which can be beneficial to an Android user.
And Mairead, you are a little ahead of Kyran on this journey, and we should point out that you use the phone in a slightly different way to Kyran. So you're a screen reader user. But
yeah, if
we could just get, just before we go back to Kyran, just quickly, your initial kind of views on when you were setting up the phone.
Okay, well, yeah, so I'm a screen reader user, so I would be mainly relying on the TalkBack or the commentary screen reader. Now, I have been using the TalkBack screen reader. I'm using the Samsung A13 at the moment. Yeah, the setup, was a little bit, it took a little bit of time, I suppose, because with Samsung, we have your own default app for the dial, for the keypad, and for messaging, and for the phone. It kind of wants to use its own kind of app. So, if you just want to use the Google system or whatever, it's trying to, it's just trying to initially get all that to work initially, and just to kind of stop Samsung kind of from taking over the phone or whatever. But like initially, once I had it set up, then it took a little bit of time to set up and configure the way I kind of liked it. But once I had it set up and the TalkBack, I suppose another thing to be aware of with Samsung as well, I have tried Google phones before, right, as well, and I had a little bit of experience with them, and I got on quite well with them. I suppose the only other thing to get used to with the Samsung is when I'm downloading apps, I like to use the Google Play Store. Whereas with the Samsung phones, it has the Samsung Galaxy Store as well. So some apps that are already installed on the phone might be installed from the Galaxy Store, and some might be from the Google Play Store. So, you could have two different sources for updates for apps and things as well. So, but anything I've downloaded from the Google Play Store. Now, I got on, once it was set up, I got on fairly okay with it. I downloaded various apps and I signed into them and I used them.
You haven't thrown it in the bin yet?
No.
Okay.
Now, as it's a demo phone, see, there's another TalkBack feature on it as well called Synaptic, and that's basically, it's kind of a more simplified version of Android. So, it kind of reminded me a bit of using Guide or even the style of using the Nokia C5, the way, because like you'd have your phone, you'd have your address book, you'd have calls, that kind of thing. So it was more kind of a simplified. Now I haven't played with that too much yet, so I'm going to, you know, do some more work on that, because for me the main focus at the moment is to get used to the talkback and how it works, and you know, just to be able, you know, support people when they come in with talkback and things. So like the gestures are pretty similar to the iPhone, you know, once you have it customized to the way you like it. So you'd double tap and the rotor, all right, using the rotor is a little bit different, you know, if you want to read something by word or character, but kind of once you have the gestures
that's the
for
up and
that,
down motion, isn't it, Mairead? Now,
yeah,
up and down swipe.
yeah. Whereas with the iPhone, you'd be kind of twisting your two fingers clockwise or anti-clockwise until you get to punctuation or characters or words or whatever.
And three or 4 years ago, that was actually like an L swipe or an L backwards to get to those menus, and it was much harder to use than it is now. But they seem to be moving, trying to make it more standardized along with iOS.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
But I do seem to be getting on okay with it now, all right. And I'm able to view my various notifications and check the battery status, make calls. The only thing I wasn't really able to get working on it, and I'm not sure, is it because of maybe default, because there's stuff already installed on the phone, so you couldn't kind of set it up from scratch. But I was trying to use the Google Assistant to make a call and send a message, but for some reason that wasn't working. I couldn't get that to work for some reason.
That was because of the pre-installed software.
I think so, maybe. Yeah.
I suppose it'd be just as well to make it clear to everyone, unless you went to that particular company for the phone, you would not get that software anyway.
Yeah.
It's just from a specialist company. Yeah, so if somebody was buying another Samsung, just straight off the shop floor, they would not have that issue.
That's interesting.
No, you wouldn't. And it's just, it'll be interesting as well to like look at that software as well after a couple of days and just see what that's like and how you interact with it. Because for me, the main focus at the moment is a talkback. One thing I was really impressed with the Samsung phone though is the battery life in it. I was getting 2.5 to 3 days without having to charge the battery, whereas.
Are you not using the phone as much, Mairead, because it's an Android phone?
That's a very good point, Sean. Very good point.
I was actually surprised, because even like when setting it up and everything, and it was going through a lot of stuff, like the battery only dropped about 6 or 7% or something in the space of like a good bit of time.
See, I only said that comment so you would admit to using it a lot, so I could go, oh, must be a better processor and better battery.
So Kyran, Mairead is kind of starting then to get the hang of it. How are you getting on? I hear in your voice there sounds like there's a bit of pain there. Is there?
Pain might be a bit too strong, but I'll tell you. So I've gotten to the point where I'm at the home screen. So I went through the typical kind of onboarding screens. The couple of things that jumped out at me straight away is the keyboard. I find that the text on the keyboard's a little bit smaller, the default keyboard, and I'm sure there's probably options out there for changing the keyboard are installed. So that'll be my first question to our Android gurus, how I could put a keyboard that has larger fonts within the text, because now I can pretty much touch type, so I can pretty much decide where it was. But when I was putting in passwords that would have had special characters and things like that, that was a bit of a struggle, for two reasons. One is because I'm just not used to that how Android, you navigate between characters and special characters. And then on iOS, I can pretty much remember them now because it's kind of muscle memory, as opposed to needing that visual cue. So I did struggle a little bit in that. So I haven't enabled any of the accessibility settings yet. I do think that's something, a good feedback point for Android is that, if you accidentally go past the accessibility settings, it should bring you back when you restart the phone. So obviously there's some flag internally on the operating system I think would need to be updated. In general, I mean this is a pretty good screen. It's a pretty large screen, so I can just about get by. Like, I wouldn't use this day to day without accessibility settings turned on. I can pretty much, I know that for certain. So what I was going to suggest is, and if we still have time, David, I'm not sure how much time we have left, but
we have as long as you want. We can stay here to 7 if you want.
I will happily do that. So I think maybe Sean and Daniel could give me a little bit of advice on how to set it up for someone with low vision, and what settings you would typically go through with a service user if they came in with the level of vision that I would have. So first, how do you find settings? I can't find settings.
So if you swipe down into your notifications,
got it.
And you can drag that a bit further, and there should be a cog there on the bottom right-hand side or somewhere on that screen.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, so I'm in. Oh yeah, and I see there's an accessibility area. Okay, so looking at the default Android accessibility, the first option I have is TalkBack. So I think I'll move past that one for now because I don't typically use TalkBack, but it's good to know that it's there. The next one is, excuse me, display size and text, which I'm pretty looking forward to changing.
Cool.
This should be exciting. This is an area now that is critical for you, really, because it's what you're using on the iOS side.
Exactly. Yeah. It looks like there is 1, 2, 3, 4 points of font size changes from smallest to largest. That would be something be quite different now on iOS. On iOS, there's up to 12. You can enable through accessibility further large fonts, so you can go right up from right up to size 12. So there's a little bit more granular change. Okay, so I'm at the maximum font size now. That didn't really change too much on the screen, which is kind of interesting. So for example, the actual text on the settings area didn't update as I updated the font size. There's a second option, which is display size. So make everything bigger or smaller. Yeah. I'm going to increase that as well, which looks like it increases both the icons and the actual the text as well. So that's a bit strange, but you know, maybe it's just what I'm used to. And there's another option for bold text, which I am going to enable. Okay, yeah, well, that does definitely make things a little bit more contrast.
Cool. So yeah, they will be so straight away there. You got through all that, Kyran, without much assistance. So well done on that.
Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah, magnification is in there.
So I'm going to go back. Okay, things are certainly much easier to read now in the settings area. I can see. It does look like font scaling, so things aren't overlapping too much, which is great to see, by the way. Yep. Well done, Android. Or Team Android, I should say. Okay, magnification. So, okay, I have options, magnification shortcut. Do you recommend turning that on, Daniel?
I do indeed. And if you may notice, there's a little inscription below that. It should maybe say something like triple tap screen or tap accessibility button. You might be able to tip on that and it brings up the full suite of options. So after you turn it on, you have it turned on?
I do, yes, magnification shortcut. So I have a red icon that's appeared on the screen, which looks kind of like a magnifying glass. Is that the one you're referring to?
That's the floating one, so it is. So that's a kind of an accessibility button for that. Mm-hmm. In the menu then, where you had the magnification shortcut on the switch, in below that you should have the options to set the shortcut. Now I'm following this from a Samsung, so it could be slightly different on the Google.
Also, it says to zoom in, use shortcut to start magnification, tap the screen, drag 2 fingers to move around the screen, pinch with 2 fingers to adjust, and then it says to zoom in temporarily, make sure that the magnification type is set to full screen. So I don't see the one you're talking to. There's an information button, but I don't see.
Okay. So what I'm looking for is kind of the actions that you can start, selecting actions that you can start to use magnification directly.
No, doesn't seem to have those.
About triple tap.
Sounds like this might be slightly different.
Yeah, it might be just a. So the only option. Oh, here we go. Nope. The only options I have are threefold. I've got magnification shortcut, which is on or off.
Yeah.
I've got magnification type, which is full screen or part of a screen.
Okay.
And then I have magnify typing, So magnifier follows text as you type, and both of those are just binary options. You can enable or disable them. So do you reckon this could be a difference in the Pixel version of Google?
I believe so.
Absolutely, yeah, I believe so. Have you your Google phone handy, Sean?
No, I have my Android, my OnePlus phone handy.
Okay.
So yeah. I have to say, just while I'm sure you guys are desperately Googling, what I did notice is now that the magnification icon, it's persistent on the screen. So if I move back to the home screen, it's there. If I click on it, it actually is quite, if you have enough vision to orientate yourself on the screen. So for example, I'm on the home screen now. I can't really read the label on one of the icons. I touch the magnification icon and hold my finger near there, and it will magnify that quite considerably up. So from getting that level of orientation, I do like that implementation of it.
Do you find that little accessibility icon of I think you described it as a red magnifier earlier on, do you find that gets in the way a little bit, or is it kind of tucked neatly out of the way when you're not using it?
You can press and hold and put that wherever you like. Then,
yeah, I mean that's a really good question. So one of the things that I've always said, and we've talked about this a lot in NCBI Labs, is the difference between, what I kind of call an inclusive tool versus an accessible tool. Like if it's an accessible tool, you're using something that's specific for accessibility. So having that persistent icon there, that reminds me that I need to have that there. I do think might get annoying. I don't know.
Yeah.
But over the next few weeks, I'll certainly.
In the menu, was there if you just tap on the words magnification shortcut?
Okay, let me come back in.
Because on my phone, it gives me the option of using that little shortcut where it's the red icon on the side, or I can press and hold my volume keys for 3 seconds, or I can triple tap the screen.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking to get you to the triple tap of the screen. I think is the most fluid one.
Okay, so I did do that, and yes, you're right. There's more options to come up. I have tap. Now, I wouldn't have known to click that now unless you told me. So, but that could be. I'm not familiar with the operating system as opposed to it.
Well, that could certainly be made clearer from a UI standpoint.
Yeah, I would think so. So what I have now is I have magnification shortcut, and then I have tap accessibility button, and that's selected, and there's more options below that. Then I have hold volume keys, so I can obviously use the volume keys to go up and down, which I probably wouldn't use because I listen to a lot of music. And then at the very bottom, there's triple tap screen. I think that's the one you're looking for, Daniel, is it?
That's the one I'm looking for, yeah.
So triple tap screen. If I save that then, I should be able to disable the shortcut. Isn't that correct?
Shortcut should probably disappear, the little floaty, because you've no other... that little floaty, you can assign different accessibility functions to that.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
Yeah. So you can, let's say you can set your triple tap for the magnification screen, which is what I kind of recommend. I'd like that little accessibility feature, and later on we'll get to this, is to have him control your select to speak function.
Actually, I'm experimenting with your triple tap to zoom in, and that is a slick way to do it, I have to say.
And it's 2 fingers to move around after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't want YouTube to send me notifications. Sorry.
And you can pinch zoom then to adjust your. As long as you should have an orange border around the screen. Am I right in saying?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you know you're magnified up. While that orange border is there, you can use pinch zoom to go in further or come out further on your screen.
Actually, yeah, I have to be fair, right? And I know I'm an iOS guy, but I could see myself getting quite used to this, because this is one of the features in iPhone that I was really worried I was going to lose. You know?
Sure.
So this is a nice implementation, I have to say. Yeah.
Would you say it's a better implementation? I know this is very early for me to ask that question, but would you say it's a better implementation?
Do you know what I find is that on iPhone you use 3 fingers instead of 3 fingers to triple tap? If I
three fingers twice.
3 fingers twice. Sorry. What I actually tend to do on my own phone is I use the side button. I do the triple tap to bring up the accessibility options, and I'll get to it from there on my iPhone. But Is it better? Yeah, I think it might
That's
be.
next week's question, is it?
I think my gut is telling me I'm going to like that. I have to say, I think I'm going to like that.
Okay,
God.
interesting. God,
like
we've converted him already.
Well, the next one. So, is there any other features that you think I should focus on, just in the interest of time? So,
select to speak. Select to speak will be a feature I think you would like.
Okay. Accessibility. Oh, select to speak. Okay, yeah. So it's select to speak shortcut. There's an enable.
Yeah.
Allow select to speak.
Allow,
okay.
yeah. So you have to give it permissions to drive the phone.
Now my accessibility button has turned blue.
Cool. So tap once. Okay, return to the home screen.
Okay.
Tap once on the accessibility icon and tap once on an icon.
Did you guys hear that? Oh, I turned the volume.
Yeah.
I think Teams might be killing the text-to-speech noise, but
it is actually working great. So, well, just to describe what I'm doing, so I'm clicking the blue button and then I'm clicking, let's say, YouTube or something like that, and it's reading out that icon. That is quite nice.
And does that work then? Let's say you Google something. Can you use that to say tap a link, for example, on the Google search results page, or tap, to get the title of a YouTube video, for example?
Yeah. Pretty much anything.
But read paragraphs and lines and
text messages.
For the
next one I want you to try. Kyran is on the home screen, right? Tap that blue icon again, but then imagine drawing a square, but not physically drawing a square on the screen. You're kind of pulling from the top left to the bottom right corner, and you will see a square appear, and everything you highlight in that square gets red. So if you kind of diagonally went over 4 icons, it's like using a mouse.
So again, I'm not sure you can see that, but actually there's a message on the top of the screen. So if I give me the instructions one more time, so I pull down. Is it, Daniel?
No. So let's say if pick a group of 4 icons, right? And after tapping the blue select to speak, and you're just going to go from the top left icon down to the bottom right icon, just out of a group of 4 of anywhere on the screen. If you've got 4 icons in a kind of a square, so you should notice a green square gets drawn on behind your finger while you're dragging from let's say northwest to southeast.
Yep, and it's working. Actually, that is working quite well, because one of the things I would be critical of iOS on this one. For reading back the screen, I know there's a 2-finger gesture. You pull down from the top, and you can read the screen. I find that gesture can be extremely difficult to get right. I tend to have to do it 2 or 3 times before I'll get it to pull down I'll get my notifications panel. I got to be call a spade a spade. I think that is also, again, that's a really nice implementation of an accessibility feature that I can really see myself using.
Yeah, I like the fact that you can define where on the screen you want the text read from.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So if there's kind of a block of text to the right of a web page, you could just kind of draw over that block of text on the right hand side of a web page, and it'll just read that only.
So the next one really, unless there's a specific feature that you want me to look at now, which I'm happy to, is Zoom. So for ability to have a kind of a monocular in my pocket that I could use to, see things that are long distance, like buses or whiteboards or things like that. Is there an equivalent on Android?
Not native. You have to download third-party magnifiers currently.
And is there one that we would recommend to people that are using Android, Sean?
Offhand, I haven't been recommending any of them recently. I don't know if you have, Daniel.
Not in particular, no. And just checking my phone, because I did download one about a year ago, I have to say. And did I play much with it? I'm not a magnifier user, so because I didn't.
I think I've got you off, guys, but I think that's one we can. There is a
magnifier and a microscope one, and the only drawback to this is there's going to be a small little banner at the bottom because it's a free app.
Well,
I'm sure.
What was the name of it again?
It's called magnifier and microscope.
Cool.
One of the reasons why we suggested the Pixel 7 was because the camera itself has such good optical and combined digital zoom that outside of a dedicated app, the camera app in there is really useful for zooming long distances, especially reading the likes of buses. And I know Adrian's been giving us lots of advice in the chat. So he's been saying like the likes of WeZoom. He's also told us about, much like iOS, you can, on the third tap, you can hold it to move around, which is like double tapping with 3 fingers and then moving around. And
thanks for all the advice, Adrian, by the way, just to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Adrian.
And Adrian's also suggesting that he uses the Swift key keyboard, which allows resizing, and much like that, the Google keyboard has settings where you can change it about. So there is a fair bit of configuration.
Yeah, the Gboard is quite flexible as well. You can choose your different themes in it, so you can set up high contrast keyboards and you can adjust the height of it. There's also kind of one finger mode, which allows you to snap it to the bottom left or bottom right of the screen as well. So if somebody didn't want to, some people type with their thumb nearly, just flying around the bottom of the screen.
And David, when you had Rebecca from Roboco on a few weeks ago, is that an iOS only app, or is that also available in Android?
Coming to Android, I believe there's an Android beta currently.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, I'd love to be a beta tester if she wants to reach out again. Do you know what I was just testing there, guys? And I think it might be equivalent. Is that, like, Sean is right, that the zoom on this camera is one of the best. I actually think it's better. It's 3 in a row now, guys.
This is concerning.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually go team Android.
I'll be switching to Windows next.
The Pixel 7
don't push the boat out too far. This is a big change, David. So I've a kind of very into audio, and I have some speakers at the opposite side of the room, and I can literally zoom in on a very small piece of text, like the logo of the speakers. I'm actually a little blown away. But
so the Pixel 7 there has an amazing camera. It combines optical and digital zoom with AI correction in terms of if it's going to blur, it will autocorrect it with its own intelligence. But this is the problem with Android devices, because this is only available on that phone. So other cameras' results may vary.
Yeah, I have to say most of the Samsung cameras I've ever had are fantastic. The quality and the zoom is fantastic. So
doesn't it beg our belief that when they have such a good camera built in, that they don't have a good magnification app also built in to benefit from it?
Yeah,
it's a fair point. Yeah,
there is. I have enabled a quick shortcut, so it prompted me when I launched the camera that time to say, do you want to enable a double tap on the sorry, not the home button, the power button, to bring up the camera. So, which is kind of equivalent to what I'm doing. I'm triple tapping on my iPhone power button to bring up the accessibility menus, and then I hit magnification. So it's kind of the same thing, but with a better camera and better. I'm feeling strange.
And how often would you use that on a daily basis, Kyran? Like on the iOS side now?
Magnification I'd use probably 30-40 times a day. Like it's pretty much like how if I'm working from home and I'm not, I'm out trying to getting a bus or anything like that, I wouldn't really use it as much for the long distance, but I'd use the short the zoom feature all the time. Like making lunch earlier, I wanted to see what the calories were on something, and I used that, and or like I'll use the zoom on the inbuilt zoom on the iPhone to if an app is designed particularly badly and I need to see more. So those type of features are like probably the most important to me. From mobility point of view, the zoom is definitely huge.
Yeah, Samsung have a magnifier built in under their accessibility options, and then you can enable that again. You just enable it with the power button and the volume up going. and that is built into Samsung. So I can't say for the Google Pixel whether they have that option further in, but maybe it's because we're used to magnification because Zoom on iOS. But if you actually go into the accessibility and see, is there magnifier is the thing you're looking for to use the camera to magnify things, whereas magnification is on-screen magnification. So slightly different wording there from your iOS.
I think we're going to have to get all the listeners to Google Stockholm Syndrome for when Kyran's on next week. He's going to be he's going to be an advocate for
this is going to be really interesting. So I think in the interest of time, I think what we might do is we might leave both Kyran and Mairead to play around with their Android phones. And if you guys would be happy to join us on the next podcast, because I'll be honest, I'm kind of scared that this is going a little too well so far. Have I been lied to my entire life?
I told you we get them in the long grass, Daniel.
Well, it's not my phone, so it belongs to iLab. So if I have to give this back, will I buy my own at the end? That's the interesting question. But
absolutely.
Thanks for the help today, guys, and thanks so much for Dominique and Adrian as well for all their advice. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to reporting back in a couple of weeks, guys.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thanks, Kyran. And if people do, of course, have Android questions or iOS questions, whatever you are using, a reminder as well that you can always email labs@ncbi.ie if you do need support. So that is a facility that is there for you. So feel free to take advantage of it. Brilliant. So thanks so much to Kyran, Mairead, Daniel and Sean for talking to us all about Android, and we'll see how that experiment goes. This is it's going to be an interesting one because I really didn't expect this. I kind of teased Android a little bit at the beginning, but maybe I'll be eating my words. We'll have to wait and see. So next up on Talking Technology today is CSUN. Now, CSUN is an assistive technology conference over in America, and we sent our own Talking Technology CSUN correspondent, Mr. Sean Doran, over to explore for us. Sean, what was it all like?
It was brilliant. I didn't see any sun because it was raining for most of the time in California, but it was actually great to be there. So CSUN is California State University Northridge, and it's their Center on Disabilities annual conference on assistive technologies.
Okay, and it's a big event. So was there a lot of assistive technology companies, or were there mainstream companies, or was it actually a mix?
It was actually a really good mix. Probably historically, a few years back, these conferences would have been bespoke technologies, would have been all kind of, stuff built for certain disabilities. But there has been a big movement in the last few years, as we all know, about mainstream technology incorporating accessibility features into their everyday items, which is fantastic.
And is it really focused on people with visual impairments, or is it broader? Is it hearing impairments, mobility, everything, or is it?
Yeah, it's much broader than that now. So while predominantly it would be sight loss, like probably 70% of the people there were using white canes. There was a lot of people with hearing impairments and other disabilities, and obviously lots of pan disabilities. So a lot of the technology there was incorporated, both sight and hearing, and so like everything in between.
Okay, very interesting. So when you went in, what was the first thing you went looking for? Did you kind of have a plan going in? Had you been before? Did you know what you were expecting?
No, it was my first time there. So obviously a good study of the schedule that week, that we knew that the technology rooms weren't opening on the first day until late that day, which allows you then to concentrate on the sessions. So there's maybe 10 rooms with sessions in them from 9 in the morning till 5 in the evening. There might be maybe 6 or 7 sessions per day in each room. So you have to kind of go through and kind of find which session suits you. And there's lots of things there, from whether that's, an educational point of view, people talking about how to maybe make websites or applications accessible, or maybe upskilling programmers or content providers and what to what to use and how to understand accessibility. So obviously that's something that NCBI and IA Labs promote a lot, and it was good to attend that to see if we're on the same page as everyone, which we are, and ahead on some pages in some regards. But on top of that, there's just lots of people kind of discussing things that might be sort of outside my remit in terms of maybe mobility and applications that might involve that. But it was like a kid in a sweet shop in terms of what am I going to go to next, and can I do two things at once? Because
Yeah,
sometimes your two favorite sessions are on at the same time.
absolutely. Interesting. So I suppose, what were did you get to see any really cool tech? What did you see there? What was the standout stuff that you saw?
So they had lots and lots of stalls there, lots of technology, lots of Braille technology, especially from an early learning point of view. So lots of digital Braille devices coming out there that schools might benefit from. Obviously lots of Braille note takers, but just sort of newer versions. But there was also people like that were gamifying Braille for children, where there was like a device like a mouse that had one Braille cell on it, which allowed you to sort of play games and check that you were spelling things correctly through Braille. They also had an endless runner game that Braille cell would display different Braille icons, not like your normal alphabet, but just sort of stuff that they had created for these games, which allowed you to know if an object was coming from the left or right, or where you should duck or jump. And games like that, that are incorporating Braille is just, it was a really fun approach to that, and lots of people were kind of incorporating things like that within the Braille education sector. Another thing was a lot of distance cameras, like for low vision people in education or in work. A big thing is being able to see projectors, whiteboards, blackboards at a distance. And there was a lot of organizations that are coming with new technologies around that, which is very interesting. It's something like Daniel's always very interested in terms of when he's working with kids in schools. So we looked at a lot of that technology. We discussed that with a lot of people. We're actually going to be meeting a lot of people about that in the coming weeks, just to further investigate them. They had everything from smart canes to canes with different types of accessories where you could attach lights to them. There were some canes that were lights themselves. It was actually looked like a lightsaber. It was
oh wow.
So at night time you could be seen by cars when you're crossing the street more easily. Now those canes aren't foldable yet, but they're going to be adding updates to them in the next year or so to allow them to be foldable. But one of the main things there was kind of like the integration of mainstream technology. Sony were there. Sony had lots of different things from their PlayStation with different screen readers and magnification features built in. The same with their televisions. They had cameras using sort of new technology which bypasses kind of like your retina and displays the image directly into your eye. So people with glasses who might struggle with some magnification on cameras, this would allow them to use cameras and maybe take pictures independently. And those cameras also had in their menu systems screen readers and magnification software. So even people without sight could, potentially line up a camera, take a picture, and then go into the menu and do what everyone else would do with a camera. They had Sony Walkman. I'm a big fan of the Sony Walkman since every inception of it. So the MP3 version now, which has 24-bit audio, really high resolution music, it was something I couldn't recommend to people 2 or 3 years ago because they were not accessible. While it had tactile controls on the side of the device, you still couldn't use it because the menus weren't accessible. But now they've integrated Android and TalkBack into those devices. And it's just that kind of movement within mainstream technology, because it's all about cost. Bespoke devices are amazing, but they can be costly. But mainstream devices are designed for everyone, and you can end up getting something much more cost effective than having to buy an MP3 player in the past that had a screen reader built into it. So it's things like that gets me really excited about these conferences, because all the bespoke technology is always fantastic. It's always innovative. But what about mainstream? Is that going to be moving in the right direction? Much like, we have TVs in a lot of offices, we've Apple TVs in a lot of offices, just to show people that these devices are readily usable by everyone. So it's great to see that more devices are moving into that sector.
Interesting. If I could ask you for, say, your one takeaway from CSUN, what would it be? Was there any like one thing that really blew you away?
It was just the people there. Everyone is there on like I said, with the same mindset of what can we do to improve either the current technology or future technologies. You're chatting to people, everyone's enthusiastic about it. Like no one's there negative, because it's sort of the inception point of a lot of products. It's the first part of market research, and everyone's there to receive information and to get feedback, and everyone's just, like I said, so positive about giving that feedback to people at these events, and everyone there is willing to take it and incorporate that into their products going forward. So to me, that was such a great experience that everyone was there trying to improve the current state of technology.
Would you like to go again?
Absolutely, but if you can arrange it to be more sunny for me, that would be even better.
Yeah, we'll give you an extra week there on your holiday for like a personal holiday, I think, will we?
I'm taking that as sign off. Thanks, David.
I think we'll need to get Kyran's approval on that. But yeah, so that's brilliant that you enjoyed it, and thanks so much for giving us an update. It sounds like there's some really cool stuff coming down the road, and it is really great to see, isn't it, that you have that mainstream kind of technology integrating accessibility at its core, which we mightn't have been able to say 10 years ago, even 5 years ago in some cases.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. Like I was saying, bespoke technology will always be needed. It's always going to serve a purpose. But I always use that kind of analogy where, like an iPhone or an Android phone is like a Swiss Army knife. It's going to do a lot of things and really well, but you mightn't always cut down a tree with the saw that's on your Swiss Army knife. And sometimes bespoke technology, like I said, maybe those cameras for schools, because maybe taking your iPhone out or your Google Pixel phone out and pointing at the blackboard, it might shake, it might be unsteady. You can't do your work at the same time while holding the phone. So with likes of those distance cameras, that's the kind of bespoke technology which is really useful. So it's that blend of what is bespoke and absolutely needed, and what can become mainstream that is completely inclusive and universal to everybody.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a fascinating perspective, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. And who knows? Hopefully, we'll be sending someone maybe next year to take a look too, because there's some really cool assistive technology at CSUN, and it's great to get an insight into what the future of accessibility might look like. So thank you for that, Sean.
No problem. Thank you, David.
Brilliant. So now it is time for the feature that never ends. That is the tech news. We have regular tech news on Talking Technology, bringing you up to date with all the goings on in both mainstream and assistive technology. And this week we have two really interesting stories. And we're going to start with Be My Eyes. And a lot of our listeners will be familiar with Be My Eyes, which is an app that you can use to link up with a volunteer if you need something read or you need assistance with something. But they're doing something really interesting now using artificial intelligence. JP, if you want to tell us a little bit about this, what's happening with Be My Eyes?
Of course, David. Yeah, so Be My Eyes introduced a new what's called a virtual volunteer tool. That's just been announced really in the last 2 weeks. So as you mentioned a moment ago, David, a lot of people will be familiar with the Be My Eyes app. It's available on both iOS and Android. So regardless of which platform that you're familiar with and using, it's available to you. Totally free, and it's enabling someone who has a visual impairment to connect with a sighted volunteer through, as you mentioned, that live video call. That can get assistance, so they can get assistance with a whole range of different things. On a personal note, I've been signed up as a sighted volunteer for the last few years with Be My Eyes, and I have taken a few calls, not too frequently, I should add, maybe once every few months. My phone will ring in the Be My Eyes app, and I'll maybe help someone with, reading like cooking instructions or finding items in the kitchen or in the living room. And one case, I actually got a request to read a blood pressure reading. So I should point out I'm not a doctor, but I was asked to do it, so I helped out as much as I could. So yeah, much talk about ChatGPT lately, David, as you mentioned, and it's news now that they've applied this AI model GPT site, just say GPT-4 from OpenAI. So the guys who've developed ChatGPT to this new virtual volunteer feature. So in terms of what this is, so this virtual volunteer tool, it's an object recognition tool that can answer questions about any image that it's sent. So for example, if you're at home thinking about making something for us to eat for dinner, you can photograph an ingredient and then request you can get related recipes sent back to you. On the other hand, for example, if you're out for lunch or out for dinner, you can upload an image of a map in the Be My Eyes app and get directions to a restaurant or a cafe, for example. And then when you're there and you're having lunch or ordering, you can take a picture of the menu and hear the various menu options. So it's pretty impressive. There's no need to be connected with a sighted volunteer. It's the AI doing this for you. Another example I could mention would be, for example, if you're in a gym, you can use the camera on your smartphone to find, for example, a treadmill or an exercise bike or whatever it is that you're looking for. I should point out now it's not an O&M tool. It's what more or less telling you though what objects are present. Okay, so the possibilities really are endless with this feature. It's really exciting news about Be My Eyes. In terms of how to actually access this, so the virtual and volunteer option is available in the app. But a little bit of testing that we've done earlier, it's worth noting that it's currently running in beta. And right now, if you're interested in using it, you'll need to actually request access to it in the app. Certainly that's the case in Ireland. We did some testing on it earlier. I know, David, you are signed up for this app, and for testing purposes, we put in that request this morning. So I'll be interested to see how long it'll take for you to actually have access to this virtual volunteer tool.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Maybe we'll keep an eye on that.
I've just looked at it again now, and I don't have access now. But for people who are using the Be My Eyes app, just to give you an idea of what it was like this morning, if you're a user of the Be My Eyes app, people will be familiar with the big blue call volunteer button in the Be My Eyes app, and there used to be a single option underneath that button that allowed you to select from specific services. But there is now an additional button, which is the beta for virtual volunteers. When you tap that button, initially, it gives you a little bit of information about the service, and then it asks you if you'd like to be added to the waiting list for the beta. I have done that, and as of now, I haven't got to try it because the button is now grayed out and it says virtual volunteer access pending. So
They've already blocked you, David.
I know. Can you blame them? They know I'm going to end up breaking.
I've been trying to figure out how to do it here all day, but they've got ahead of me.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I think this will be interesting. Once we do get access, we will certainly try it out and show people how it does work.
Interested to see how it goes. It's interesting.
Early stages.
It is. I think, and it's good to see like another app like Be My Eyes that's harnessing power of AI through, in this case, GPT-4 to enhance the user experience. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes and how much traction it gets. Yeah.
Absolutely, and it might make things even a little more private. Not having to rely on people the whole time. So it'll be an interesting experiment, and hopefully, once one of us around here gets granted access, we will hopefully be able to show that to you. So that's Be My Eyes, and Microsoft have also been making changes over the last little while, Daniel. So what's happening with Microsoft?
Absolutely, David. Yes. So I think, Sean, you might have come across this at your conference, but Microsoft have said they're changing the accessibility checker that we're familiar with in particularly in Office 365, and it's going to change over to what we call accessibility assistant. So it's going to bring creating accessible content more and more to the fore. And interestingly, when I went in on their blog about this, and one of their, I suppose, why are we doing this? They said that nearly 97% of homepages on the public web contain some sort of accessible issue, whether it's a missing image description or a video without captions or hard to read text colors and things like that. So that was a very, very interesting statistic for me. So with the top million public web pages out there, 97% of them have some sort of problem. So I suppose this kind of speared Microsoft to say, right, okay, we do have accessibility checker. It's kind of there, it's at the bottom bar of, let's say if you're in Microsoft Word, probably, and I don't want to assume anything, but I would say probably a lot of people are guilty of just going, pushing on past it. But now when you are designing documents and things in Office 365 going forward and emails and whatnot, if you're choosing things like colors and graphics and things like that, it's going to kind of come up more center screen of you, right? And there's actually an interesting screenshot on the Microsoft blog about halfway down the page. And, somebody's just putting in a heading, it's called hiking trails, and I have a kind of a light orange text on a white background. And up pops the accessibility assistant and he says, hey, this is a hard to read text color. It's, this color is difficult for some readers to see. Maybe try one of these colors to fix it, and it gives you suggestions. So it seems to be a very kind of, accessibility, this is going to hold you by the hand and guide you through making better content, better documents and whatnot out there. So for me, it's it's something that I think is a very, very good step forward. So that's a thumbs up for Microsoft on this. It seems to be just recently announced, so I presume it's going to get dropped in the near future into the Microsoft Office 365 suite of programs. They'll probably expand it out after that. But it's definitely one going in the right direction. And I suppose another thing too that I'll just maybe let people know about today, but I'm not going to go into too much detail on it. It's the Power Toys for Windows 10 and Windows 11 users. Back last September, they've included this OCR picker, which I hope to getting around and reviewing in more detail. I had a quick look at it. Initial thoughts on it are very, very impressive. So maybe, you've got an email that has a scanned PDF as attachment. It allows you kind of cut out a region of the screen using a keyboard shortcut. And then when you go into Word or Notepad or something like that, and you do your Control and V, it'll actually paste that text in for you. So it's automatically OCR'd it for you, which is quite a very, very useful tool. There's a few more bits in the Windows Power Toys they're called. I'll be going through them more over the coming weeks.
Brilliant, interesting. It's really cool, isn't it, to see Microsoft maybe even doing stuff to assist people who maybe may not have thought about accessibility before, to help those people make their documents accessible almost, without even realizing, which is really cool.
Yeah, I suppose it's to look on it in a way like everybody who creates material, like they're potentially guilty and not necessarily knowing, inadvertently being guilty of creating inaccessible content. So having something that kind of pops up and puts that front and center and just kind of makes you go, yeah, actually I can see, I can see how that would be difficult for somebody to read. And it just gets the brain thinking a little bit more about it. So it's definitely a wonderful development, I think.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing it with us. It sounds really cool, and it'll be interesting to watch how that develops over the next few weeks and months. It sounds like a really cool feature that we'll be keeping our eye on. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. That is it for the show today. Can you believe it? We have come to the end of episode number 27. We had a packed show, everything Android and tech news and so much more as well. So
I'd say we can't wait till 2 weeks time when we
I know. I'm really excited to kind of just see how this experiment goes. This is a really interesting one. That it will we'll need to wait and see, but who knows? I've been guilty, I must admit, of teasing Android a bit in the past, but who knows? I might be eating my words, and I'll happily do it if I'm wrong, but I don't know whether I'll be switching to I don't know whether I'll be switching to Android myself. I think I'm with Dominique on these ones. But we'll have to, who knows? We'll let the experiment take its course and see how we go. So coming up in a few weeks' time, in 2 weeks' time even, in future shows, we'll be following up on the Android experiment, the great Android experiment of 2023, to see how Kyran and Mairead are getting on. And we'll also be doing a show in the next little while following up with IA Labs to see how they're getting on in their first year, which is really exciting, and we're really looking forward to that. If you do want to get in touch with NCBI Labs to get any technical support, or you need assistance with anything, as always, you can send an email to labs@ncbi.ie, or you can call the NCBI info line on 1-800-911-250. And of course, if you want to keep up to date with some of the content from the NCBI Labs team, you can subscribe to the NCBI Labs YouTube channel. You can get our technology newsletter. And of course, you can subscribe to this very podcast, Talking Technology, wherever you get your podcasts. So do subscribe and follow and do all of those things in all those places, because it really does help us out, and we thank you for it. But for now, that brings us to the end. Thank you so much to everyone who participated in the podcast. Thank you for everyone as well leaving their comments in the Q&A panel and by email. Much appreciated. And we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with another episode of Talking Technology from NCBI Labs. But until then, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Talking Technology podcast with NCBI Labs. If you would like to support our show, you can visit donate.ncbi.ie. The NCBI Labs Talking Technology podcast is proudly sponsored by IA Labs, the market leader in the provision of digital accessibility services.